Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning into Sunday School Bonanza, where we bring you brief gospel doctrine reviews so that you can better prepare for Sunday school, or at least get some Sunday school in if you have a calling that prohibits you from going to Sunday school, like me. That's all. I'm joined by Eric Meldrum this week. Eric!
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Oh, lovely. I'm so great. Nice to see you here.
Good. Yeah.
Oh, you're fine. Anyways.
Mic issues.
You okay?
We're good.
You all right?
I'm
okay?
good.
Okay. It's good. It's going to be good. So this week we're on Lesson 9, The Only True and Living Church. This lesson very simply deals with the actual organization of the church, just the church itself. I mean, we've talked about the restoration of the priesthood, of baptism, of a lot of things. Now it's sort of all culminating into the restoration of the church. One thing I wonder about, though, and I wonder if you have any insights to this, Eric, why do we have to organize a church itself? Why wasn't it enough to have the saving ordinances of the gospel? Why did we have to organize a church?
You know, I've wondered that myself, and the way I see it is that the church is a vehicle. It's a method of transporting those saving ordinances and the putting the principles of the gospel into practice to us. So. Is that, as far as it being a necessary thing, I don't know. I mean, I guess so. With the priesthood authority, I don't know how you would have the priesthood authority in the organization
That's true.
without having a church or some kind of structure, some kind of body in place. But yeah, I think the church. We hear a lot that the church is there to support our families. The church is there to it's the vehicle that provides that enables us to learn and to practice the principles of the gospel.
Yeah, I loved that conference talk from almost a year ago now, I guess, and I think April of 2012 when they talked about the difference between the gospel and the church, which I thought was really, really, really insightful. And one thing I think we could think about in this is the church. Yeah, I think the church exists as a very important functioning body to sort of drive the work forward and organize us in a certain way. And it's, and I like that one talk that I just referenced, because how often we say, I know that the church is true, when really I think what we're testifying of is that the gospel is true. And it's a good distinction to draw. Nevertheless, the church is, of course, extremely important. Christ organized his church during his ministry. The church was organized by Alma, for example. This has gone on since ancient times, all the way back to Adam and Enoch and all these folks. So obviously the continuity is something to consider. Now, the date the church was organized?
April 6th, 1830.
He knows. Good man. Why was that date chosen, though? It could have been any day.
It could have been any day. There's a lot of significance behind that date, April 30. That as we look back in our history, the Kirtland Temple a few years later was dedicated around the same time in 1835, I believe. A lot of times we ascribe the date of April 6th to various things dealing with the Savior, such as his crucifixion or resurrection. And his birth. Yeah. So April 6th is an important date. Now, I'm not exactly sure why that specific day was chosen. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, if we go to Doctrine and Covenants, section 20, the heading actually explains it. I could paraphrase it. It's revelation given to the prophet Joseph Smith at Fayette, New York. The prophet wrote that we obtained of him, Jesus Christ, the following by the spirit of prophecy and revelation, which not only gave us much information, but also pointed out to us the precise day upon which, according to his will and commandment, we should proceed to organize his church. So it came through revelation, but I'm assuming it also came because we believe that Christ was born on April 6th. And it was a nice time to actually do that. And I think for that reason today, Kirtland Temple, we do a lot of things around that date. I think that's why we have General Conference typically on the first weekend in April, not necessarily on the 6th, but right around then. And a lot of stuff is centered around then since that time, specifically because of that. Also good to bear in mind that, of course, 10 years had passed between the first vision and the restoration of the church itself, which is a long time when you think about it. But I don't know. Gosh, when I think about it, though, I mean, the first vision happened, but then you had many years of visits from Moroni and all that. The translation process of the Book of Mormon took how long?
Well, from the time that after Joseph Smith lost the 116 pages, which took quite a while to translate those, and then the losing of the pages, and then getting the plates back. Once that happened, it was about a month to 6 weeks that
it was pretty quick.
The rest of the Book of Mormon pretty much was translated. Now the Book of Mormon wasn't published in its full and complete form until just the month before the organization of the church. So I feel like you have a lot of, the first vision happens in 1820, and then 1823 is when Joseph Smith has that first visit from Moroni, and then every year for the next 4 years, I believe, he's receiving visits from Moroni, but without being given permission to get started on the plates. And then finally he obtains the plates, and it still takes another couple of years. He's traveling back and forth between Pennsylvania and New York. He gets married, he's living a family life, and then finally I'd say the bulk of the restoration leading up to the organization of the church happens in 1829 with the visitation of John the Baptist, and restoring the Aaronic priesthood, and then restoring the Melchizedek priesthood from Peter, James, and John. And all of this happens pretty much within about a year before the church was organized.
This is a little unrelated. Do we know how much time passed between the restoration of the Aaronic priesthood, for which there's a very specific date ascribed, and the Melchizedek priesthood?
We don't. I was actually recently reading Rough Stone Rolling, Richard Bushman's biography of Joseph Smith, and there really isn't much said about the restoration of either priesthood, but especially the Melchizedek priesthood within that within the real early period of the church. Most of the writings about it happen later, like in the mid 1830s, kind of looking back retroactively at that. So
it's interesting too.
Period.
And it's interesting too, because I feel like in this early period of church history, like when the church was organized, the Aaronic priesthood was really the one that was being used to drive the ordinances, because there were no temple ordinances yet. So you see that, for example, just for some more background, of course, about 50 odd people met in the home of Peter Whitmer in Fayette, New York, which is a church history site today. If you ever want to go there, go visit it. But then, of course, only 6 were actual members of the church at the time. That was mostly because of state law in New York required at least 6 people, and that's it. Eric and I were talking beforehand, though, and I still don't fully know why more were not thrown on the rolls right then and there, and whether it was because only those 6 had been baptized or not. I'm not sure, because we know, for example, that Joseph Smith Sr. was not among the 6 right there on the spot, but he was a member very immediately thereafter, as far as I know. So I feel like I went on a tangent there based on what you were talking about before, and I can't remember what you were saying. I just don't know. But anyway, so a lot of stuff, and just so you know, the 6 men who were the official members of the church starting out: Joseph Smith, of course, Oliver Cowdery, Hiram Smith, Peter Whitmer Jr., Samuel H. Smith, and David Whitmer. That was it. Those were the original 6. Those who had been baptized and were, as the original members of the church, were also given the gift of the Holy Ghost at that time. And the church went from there. And of course, there were many more members, I imagine, even in just those subsequent weeks. I'm sure that very easily, quintupled, and right away, obviously, with the people they had. Why the church's name, of course, was not what it is today, though, at first.
No, it was originally called the Church of Christ. And that's a name that was referred to many times in the Book of Mormon, and it was just simple, and got the point across that, hey, this is not the Methodist Church, this is not the Presbyterian Church, it's not the church of anybody except Christ. And there's a very prominent passage in the Book of Mormon that talks about that.
Is that Mosiah?
It does talk about it in Mosiah,
King Benjamin, great guy.
Yeah.
Winner.
But it isn't until 1838 that the revelation is given to officially declare the name of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And up until that point, it was pretty much just referred to as the Church of Christ.
Yeah. And even before that, there were some times when people actually called it the Church of Latter-day Saints, even
Mm-hmm.
unofficially. It bounced around quite a bit, I guess, for a while, and there was nothing super clear. And there is a revelation. Why do they officially change the name finally by 1838 to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? What leads to that? Or why does it happen? Why does the Lord choose that name?
Well, I think
Testing you, Eric.
it's an indication of the nature of the church and what its purpose, what its mission is. It's not just a church. The church is not an existential organization. The purpose of the church is not just to exist and to just be. It's
Right.
to move forward. It's to prepare for, as we're here in the latter days, it's to prepare for the coming of the Savior, and it's got a mission. It's got a purpose. It's got a work to accomplish. So I think the changing of the name just reflects that.
Yeah, of course. And of course, to distinguish it, as we always say, from the ancient church back in the day, that it is of Latter-day Saints. We are all Latter-day Saints. So remember that with your friends. I feel like the rest of the lesson is kind of straightforward. I mean, we've mostly been talking about the actual restoration of it, which I think is interesting. Because the second and third sections of this lesson, the second one talks about the Lord commands church members to follow the prophets, which I feel like is, I don't know if we're breaking a lot of ground here. Is there something I'm missing?
I think that's pretty much been one of the top commandments from the beginning.
It is important, though. There's a revelation, though, in Doctrine and Covenants 21. And I guess if I put myself more in the context of the people there in 1830, to have that revelation of the Lord saying, your church is organized, follow the prophet who is the president of the church, and do that. I could understand that being more, novel counsel in that sense of something that would be much more, I don't want to say it's not of value today, but you know what I mean. It's not as rote as it might be at this point.
Yeah, I think the organization, the church at that time, it was still a really nebulous sort of organization, and it wasn't really clear, what are the lines of authority and the channels of communication. I mean, you had the incident where Hiram Page and some others were claiming to receive revelations on their own on behalf of the church, and the Lord had to reveal through Joseph Smith a rebuke to Hiram Page, saying, no, this is not, my church receives my word through Joseph Smith. So it was,
not to mention what's his face who I'm blanking on his name, found his own plates, but this was more later on when the schism with the Reformed Church and this and that.
Yeah, I don't
blanking on his name. Another guy who had plates, settled up in Michigan. I forgot what his name. Keep thinking. I'm gonna find this out.
Okay.
Talk to me.
So yeah, this period of time is actually really fascinating because you have Joseph Smith, who at this point is still, he's still a young man. He's still only 24 years old by the time the church is organized, and he's trying to build an organization. His family, they're a little bit outcast from society because they don't fall into the mainstream of the Presbyterian or the Methodist or the Baptist churches that are around, and so you see the growth of the prophet. You see him expanding his vision of, the Lord expanding his mind as to what the future holds for this church. And I think from this point on, from the beginning, Joseph Smith has a pretty grand vision for the church that a lot of people took a lot longer to kind of catch on to.
For sure. So that happens, and then the Lord encourages them, of course, to take the sacrament, to make that an important part of their worship, which obviously would be new knowledge at that stage in the game. And it's important that we take the sacrament today. We have entire lessons about the sacrament, so I don't feel the need to dwell on it a ton right now. But what I do like is that he closes with this: the duties of the members of the church after they have received baptism, found in Doctrine and Covenants, section 20. Verses 68, 69. It says, the duty of the members after they are received by baptism, the elders or priests, are to have a sufficient time to expound all things concerning the church of Christ to their understanding, previous to their partaking of the sacrament, and being confirmed by the laying on of the hands of the elders, so that all things may be done in order. And the members shall manifest before the church and also before the elders by a godly walk and conversation, that they are worthy of it, that there may be works and faith agreeable to the Holy Scriptures, walking in holiness before the Lord. So tack that on to the baptismal covenant. That's what else you get to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this whole section 20 is a really interesting section. It was kind of the charter of the church to begin with. It was kind of the revelation that was given
Right.
To organize the church, and it structured the church in a way that was pretty similar to a lot of the churches around. So I think, in a way, this section 20 was showing to people outside the church that, hey, we're not crazy. We're not we've got some good things going here. Yeah, we have a little bit different beliefs, but we're not. We're a church.
No.
This isn't just a bunch of, we're not just hanging out by the campfire.
Or a cult, for that matter.
Or a cult.
Anyway, this lesson, that's about it for this lesson. So, Eric, thank you for coming here. Appreciate having you here.
Thanks, Jeff.
Nice to have you. Of course, you can find us at thisweekinmormons.com and find us at facebook.com/thisweekinmormons. We encourage you to like us on there so you can receive all of our updates. And find us on Twitter at TheRealTwim. And, of course, email us, contact@thisweekinmormons.com. This has been lesson number 9, the only true and living church from the Church History and Doctrine and Covenants Manual. And this, of course, is Sunday School Bonanza, bringing you gospel doctrine in a digestible and entertaining way, or something. I don't know what I'm saying. All right, whatever.
It's entertaining to me.
Have a good Sunday, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.